Hey everybody! Today I'm excited to say I'm finally taking a look at one of my favorite series, Mega Man. One of the most iconic series in all of video games. Some are better than others, and it might not be to everyone's taste. There is a certain degree of masochism that goes along with some of the more brutal platforming aspects, some of the bosses, some of the horrible spike and lava-filled stretches. But anyway, I love it. And today we're going to be looking at very possibly the most obscure title in the entire series, which is pretty unfortunate because it has some really cool features. Today we're looking at Mega Man Powered Up on the PlayStation Portable. So buckle up, get those arm cannons ready, and let's go! And we start off here with a very colorful opening. You can get a good look at that artwork. Colorful, extraordinarily large heads. This is what to expect throughout the game. Here's a little look at the game that this is based on, the original Mega Man for the NES. I'm not sure that I'd call that a fun game, but yeah, it happened. It's brutally hard, and it is responsible for an awesome series, so I'll give it that. You even have the option to play through a version that's very similar to that, but we'll get into that. Here's the story. This is pretty similar to the story from the NES, although most of that is gleaned from manuals and ancillary sources. The game itself didn't have a whole lot to show, but as you can see here, Dr. Wily, I won't call him evil. We can probably discuss his backstory a little bit at a different time, but for this, yeah, he's portrayed as kind of cartoonishly bad. He wants to conquer the world because he wants to conquer the world. And in his jealousy toward Dr. Light, he's captured a bunch of the robots he's created, and he's going to reprogram them to do his bidding. And here's where Mega Man, who had been essentially just a lab assistant, gets the upgrade into the blue bomber we all know and love. Or, if we don't, we should. Yep, there he goes. And there, aside from the giant head, that is the iconic hero I have come to expect over the years. And with that, on to the second half of the intro level, where Mega Man actually has some powers. The jumping's there, the shooting is there. I will note, for the basic Mega Man character included in the game, he does have the abilities that he had in Mega Man 1, so he can jump, he can run, and he can shoot. Then, of course, he can absorb powers. And that's it. No sliding, although a slide variant is included after you beat the game. So, just throw that out there. First boss, more or less comic relief, but there it is. Intro level cleared. And now we're going to get into the real meat of the game. For those who have experienced Mega Man 1, you'll notice they've included 2 extra bosses. We've got Oil Man and Time Man, in addition to Fireman, Iceman, Cutman, Gutsman, Bomb Man, Lick Man. Starting off with the Cutman level, because, full disclosure, I started off with the Gutsman level, and until I got used to the game, decided to step back from that. So, Cutsman's level, you'll notice a few things here. First, if you've played the original, there are some differences that make this easier. There are these little red blocks, or red and white blocks, like they're in the bottom. Those cover gaps that you could otherwise fall through, usually over spikes or bottomless pits. You'll also see there are, and there's another one right over some spikes, you'll also see there are blocks and things that have different bosses' elements on them. Those will allow you to do different things in the level and access different parts. Anyway, here's that first boss fight against Cutman. You can see he's apparently been manipulated by Dr. Wily to believe he's doing the right thing. The original game, obviously there wasn't all that discussion, but that's neither here nor there. He's defeated. Another thing I'll point out, with this game, you are able to unlock bosses, which is really exciting. But in order to do so, you have to defeat them with the Mega Buster. If you use a weapon they're weak to, they'll be destroyed, and you won't be able to use them later. So for this playthrough, you'll notice I'm defeating everyone with a Mega Buster. On to Time Man's level. which is set in a giant clockwork facility. I don't know. This kind of reminds me of the clock tower in Castlevania, though a little bit more cartoonish than creepy. But in any case, we've got Time Man here. They borrowed some enemies from, I want to say this originated in Flashman's level in Mega Man 2. We've got these fun shocky pendulums. And as you can see here, these little time bombs that can be used as platforms to jump on. Their time varies by the difficulty you're on. So if you're on easy, you'll get 5 seconds. Normal, you get 3. I'm not entirely certain beyond that. I'll also note the red cross platforms. Again, make this a lot more bearable. Without those, this level would have difficulty on par with those from the original game. So that's kind of cool, or not, depending on how you look at the original game. Getting into the fight with Time Man, he does have some of the cooler abilities as a boss. He can freeze time, he can shoot time arrows. You get the ability to slow time. And I will point out something I didn't learn until a bit too late. That can be done, and then you can switch to another weapon. So you can slow time and then use other abilities if you'd like, or just switch to the Buster so you can fire. Speaking of fire, here we are, Fireman's level. For those that have played the game, you'll probably recall this level is full of things that can burn Mega Man, unsurprisingly, given the boss. I'm not exactly sure what it's supposed to be, maybe a foundry? There's definitely a lot of molten metal, I'm guessing, that is around. And you do have these robots that can shoot fireballs at you. Fireballs are destructible, good to know. If I had the ice ability, I could have gotten up to that other ladder, but that's okay, you really need to. Same there. Iceman's ability will allow you to access the platform above. And I'll note if you're playing on normal or a harder difficulty, there are some items that you can collect to use in the level editor, which we'll discuss later as well. Pretty cool feature, I'll say that for you. More little fireball robots, more platforming over lava. Although, as fire levels go in Mega Man, this really isn't that bad. If you've played Mega Man 2, you know what I'm talking about. Checkpoints are definitely another major change from the original, so if you are defeated, you pick up right where you left off, and there's always one in front of the bosses, so that's kind of useful if you're going to have to use some continues. Fireman, just, you know, shoots these little walls of flame. And there it is. Fireman defeated. And with that you get the Firestorm, which is pretty cool because it gives you a shield as well as a projectile. Onto Elecman, the shocking guardian of what I'm treating as the 4th level. This one, I'm gonna say is... I mean, Power Plant would make sense, but I don't know. This looks like it would be inside a giant electronic device of some kind. It doesn't really matter. This is where we first meet the vanishing platforms, which will make an appearance later in the series in different ways. Don't go in front of the electrical blasters, you'll get shocked, as I demonstrated there. It does look like a chip of some sort controlling that. Anyway, back up the ladders, across these little platforming bits. If it weren't for little red cross boxes, you'd just have those little fly robots. Oh, and this is kind of fun. The entries here aren't just a horizontal path. They do go in different directions, and as we'll see later in the original, there were even enemies in them. So that is different to later entries. If I had the Gutsman ability, I could pick up these blocks and smash Electman with them, but then I couldn't play as him later. And let's be honest, he is one of the coolest bosses in the game, so we don't want to mess that up. On to Oil Man's level, which appears to be an oil field, but also has windmills. I guess, using wind to power the derricks, or they're trying to offset their carbon footprint. I don't know, I'm not even going to try to explain this. Cactus guys, for some reason. The oil in this level. Note, anywhere with oil is slippery, and if you move any direction, that'll happen. Best way to go is just jump and then move after you're in the air. Oh, the other thing about it, it's flammable, which, you know, could potentially be used to your advantage. After it burns off, it's not slippery. And these little oil vials or whatever can be blown up to access whatever it is that's behind them. In this case, an extra life. I do kind of wish they looked like Mega Man heads from nostalgia, but you know, parts kind of make sense. The other thing you'll notice, the little score balls. Keeping with the original game setup, it keeps score. I never really saw that as meaning anything, but the original game was designed in a time when arcades were the norm in gaming, and it shows. On the Oil Man, his ability is to shoot globs of oil, which he can slide on if he ever gets to them. That's also how the weapon works when you have it, so you can shoot a glob of oil, slide across it, and basically wipe out any enemy that you run into. Kind of like skateboarding, but on oil, and deadly for some reason. And there's the power. The color scheme's kind of cool, but like metallic maroon and gray. Bomb Man, always a classic. Actually, I believe he's the boss they used in the little one-off episode on Netflix. I forget what that's called, but yeah. For this one, it appears that we're visiting some sort of a munitions factory, which makes sense, given that he is an explosives-focused robot. Lots of jumping, lots of bombs. We'll see later, some fun missiles. But yeah, the platforming here is definitely more tame than at a lot of places in the game. But you've still got a few things that are trying to shoot you or blow you up. Speaking of those missile robots, here they come. They're not too intimidating at that speed, but if you're playing on the harder modes, they do move a bit quicker. These little spiked Roomba robots can be destroyed by Electman's power, which I love, because otherwise they are pretty annoying. Oh, those floating dual-helmeted Meti things, whatever they are, one of my least favorite enemies. They're just hard to take out, and they shoot everywhere. In the more difficult versions of the game, they actually shoot in all 8 directions. Let me get these. Not terribly intimidating, but they are more problematic in harder difficulty settings. They get pretty manic, even on normal, and just kind of fly in all directions. And here he is, Bomb Man himself. In the easy version, he's not terribly threatening. He tosses his bombs. They can be a little bit hard to avoid, but there's not a whole lot to him. Once you get up to the normal setting, he does become more threatening, and in fact gains a Mega Bomb. I'll show you some of that later on in the video. And on to Gutsman's level. This is just objectively the worst level in the game, to my memory. I believe I've been scarred as a child, just doing exactly that. Trying to reach these platforms, jumping, and falling into the abyss, which is just so much at this level. I'll note, adding in the red cross blocks does make a lot of this easier, but even then, it's still the hardest level in the game by a fair margin. And yeah, without the red cross blocks, it would be much, much worse. But even with them, there's a fair chance you're going to lose a life or two just trying to get through this thing. But hey, checkpoints. Once you do finally get through the level, you're faced with Gutsman, who's probably as easy as the level is hard, so there is at least that. You're terribly likely to end up losing this boss. And once you beat him, you gain an ability, which is contextually useful. It literally only works if there is a heavy block nearby, but you know, it comes up. With that, it's on to Iceman. Definitely the coolest robot master in this game.
Stop and freeze!
Was that a dad joke? Oh well, it happens. Try to avoid them, but sometimes I slip. Anyway, this level's pretty much what you'd expect from an ice-themed boss. You've got freezing water, propeller-driven penguins, ice, and we'll get into that in a minute. The ice is pretty important here. And generally just a really chilly surrounding. Now you'll notice the platforms here are made of ice, or have a sheet of ice on them. Take a look at that. That slipping action, that is one of the defining features of this level, which, along with the pitfalls, probably makes it the second hardest in the game, following Gutsman's. Just nothing can compare to Gutsman, and that includes the dragon fight from Mega Man 2. But that's neither here nor there. This section would be terrible if you just had the little helicopter robots and slippery sections to stand on. The blocks do make that a lot easier. Anyway, once you survive the perils of the frozen north, you get to fight Iceman, who for some reason has a soldier motif. I don't know that I would have chosen that, but oh well. Creative license, I guess. Anyway, his attacks aren't too bad. Slow-moving projectiles, easy enough to avoid. And once you defeat him, you do get one of the coolest powers in the game. Oh, there I go again. And on to another little chat with Dr. Bathair. I mean, Dr. Wily. Anyway, as you can see, Hair Batman here has his plans to conquer the world, as we know. And he's challenged you to face off with him in his fortress. Now on to the first level of that. And here, the levels here, I mean, they're not the easiest in the world, but they're really not as bad as some of what we've seen. I don't want to harp on Gutsman's level, but, you know. There are some interesting setups here, and there are some sections where you might get hurt, but by and large, these are just a colorful means to reaching whatever boss they're guarding. This one is very pink. And on to the Yellow Devil. In the original game, this thing was the stuff of nightmares. And on the harder difficulties, it still is. This one, he just kind of shoots things out of his eye and is generally invincible if the eye is hidden. Not really that big a deal. He's weak to fire, if you're interested in that, but again, doesn't really matter. The harder versions, and in the original, parts of his body fly across screen, and you have to dodge in a perfect pattern without the ability to slide, so there's some difficulty there. Easy mode, yeah, he's pretty easy. And on to Woo Op. The second level is, I guess, Dr. Wily's personal sewer. As you can see here, plenty of traps. Where it really gets going is this little hallway leading up to the boss. It looks like Wily just flushed the toilet, so yeah, things are getting real. This playthrough, I got hit quite a few times, I didn't really need to. The trick here is basically just don't touch the D-pad. Just keep shooting ahead of you and don't touch the D-pad, and you'll avoid most of the problems here. You get to the medis, and you know, you probably take a hit or two, not that big a deal. The missile robots, there are plenty of them, and in my experience, they drop some pretty good stuff. We're talking health, lives, the whole thing. And here's the boss. The Bubble Guardian, I guess. I mean, he's just known by his serial number. Buster is okay. The Super Arm is the best way to go. Electman's power will freeze it, but not for long, so not really that helpful. Of course, Time Freeze slows him down, and you can get in some free hits there. The biggest trick is really to play defensive. Don't let him hit you, and avoid his shots, and you'll blow him up in a little while. He just takes some time. Dodge, shoot, rinse, repeat. And with that, we're on to the third section. The ever-popular Boss Rush. This is just an iconic part of the Mega Man series. You suffer through all the horrors it has to offer, and then you get to go back and refight all of the bosses before getting to take on the final boss in the game. So prepare for that. And I will note again, If these little plus sign blocks were off, this level actually would be kind of horrible. But with them, not so bad. Watch out, there are spikes on the ceiling there. Catches you off guard, it's gonna hurt. And here we go. As I was saying about those robot masters, they're all back. Now we're gonna speed through this since we've already seen it once. I will note this time, I'm not taking it easy on them. We've already rescued them, so the kid gloves come off. Plus, a notable change between this and the original version of the game, your sub-weapon energy refills anytime you lose a life or start a new level. So, in the old game, you had the strategy, making sure you had what you needed going into the later boss fights. In this game, you can just go all out. I know that's going to be divisive. Some folks are probably going to miss that strategic element. I never enjoyed it that much, so like I said, yeah, lost a life, and now the weapons are full, and just continue going to town on them. Oh, there's Gutsman again. The horror. I'm hitting some of these with the Mega Buster, but it's primarily because it has a stun effect, rather than its most effective weapon in all cases. That's also a bit of a difference. I'm not used to stunning things with a simple Mega Buster, but... Oh yeah, Iceman is weak to bombs rather than fire. I always forget that. And for whatever reason, Fireman is weak to ice. Seems a bit backward, particularly if you've played much Pokemon, but it's how it works in the Mega Man world. And with that, the Robot Masters are in the rearview mirror. Just time to move on through the rest of this level and face off against the real boss here. Drumroll please. A fake Mega Man. I mean, every other robot in the game gets a doppelganger. Wouldn't be right if Mega Man didn't, right? And spoiler warning, this isn't the only time in the game we'll see an Ersatz Blue Bomber. Oh, I've gotta say, the other one's a lot cooler. But he might give you the blues. Anyway, keep an eye out for this guy. He does have all of your abilities, and he doesn't exactly have a weakness. So, again, easy, he's a cakewalk. Harder difficulties, it's kind of like facing off against yourself, so just be prepared for that. And here we are, in the final level of the game. A surprisingly pink and green factory of some kind, I'm gonna call this. I mean, it's Wily. I'm just gonna assume this is like his personal robot factory. In any case, we'll get through here. The hallway is a little bit annoying, there's a lot of stuff that can hit you. But the real danger comes here, with the spike zone, and of course, the dropping platforms from Gutsman's level. Couldn't get through the game without saying those things again. It's not too terrible with the platforms, and certainly the plus blocks make it easier. But in any case, here we are, the final boss. Get ready, this Sunday, Sunday, Sunday! That's right. Dr. Wily has brought his own monster truck to battle the Blue Bomber. Makes about as much sense as anything, I guess. But yeah, his first outing, he's chosen to bring his crazy truck into it. And for this battle, his weakness is the bomb, so just prepare for that. It's a little bit harder to pull off because you've got to be closer than some of the other weapons, but it does damage like nothing else. A little bombing, a little shooting, and with that, the Monster Truck of Doom has been destroyed, and Mega Man is victorious. Cue the credits. These are kind of fun. You get some different art of the various robot masters. I've gotta say, while I don't love the chibi art style, I might have liked it better if they had gone for the hand-drawn 2D effect. They do look pretty cool in these pictures. And here we go, Mega is reunited with all his friends he saved over the game. Now, the next thing. This is the select that we talked about. You've got all of the Robot Masters you've unlocked, and when you've beaten the game once, you also get Mega Man S. Let me just demonstrate here. The S doesn't stand for Super, it stands for Slide. That's right. Mega Man gets the slide ability that he receives in some of the later titles, and that's pretty much it. Otherwise, he plays exactly the same. It does open up some new possibilities, some new places to dodge, some shortcuts, but I wouldn't call it just night and day. Now, you may have noticed a couple differences here with this playthrough. For one thing, the enemies are moving quicker, these are shooting a little bit faster, the time bomb platforms only have 3 seconds, and of course, the metis there are shooting in all directions. This is normal mode, so you can see things are a little bit more challenging, but not too overwhelming. You also take more damage each time you're hit, so it's a little bit different to the playthrough that I did for most of this review. You can also see the battle with Bomb Man here. Oh, and there we go. He's added a giant bomb attack. Of course, since I've already unlocked him, I don't need to take it easy on him. Just wanted to show you the giant bomb. Just fine at this point, having beaten the game once, to use the weaknesses every chance you get. So, have fun, play it as you usually would a Mega Man game. Now we get a look at using some of the different characters. I'll first point out, using Iceman here, you do have to play through the intro level with each character. I'm not such a fan of that. It just kind of feels like a waste of time, but, you know, it's the decision they made. Iceman going through his own level, and oh look! Another fake Mega Man. Who could that be? A fake Mega Man wearing a scarf. Spoiler, it's Proto Man in disguise. Now, he is in the game as well. He's just hard to get to. In order to unlock Proto Man, you have to clear 100 challenges, which I did at one point, I think, but I don't have that save data. For this playthrough, it's just... I'm not going to show them off, but if you want to do it, if you have the game, 100 challenges, and you're there. Next up, we see Elecman, probably one of the strongest boss characters, and this is just a quick playthrough of his level. You can sort of see how he shocks his way through everything, and now he too gets to face the horror that is fake Mega Man. It's actually a long and storied history of fake Mega Men throughout the generations. Fake Mega Man, Proto Man pretending to be Mega Man, Quint, the quintessential fake Mega Man, who's also responsible for some time travel shenanigans, destroying a past Mega Man and creating an alternate timeline. In addition to the game that we've seen so far, there is also this level editor. This is as close as I think as close as we've seen this far to an official Mega Man Maker. So yeah, level editor in the vein of Mario Maker. Now this last portion of gameplay here is going to show the old style. So we've seen the new style where they have made the levels easier, they've changed some arrangements, they've added some red cross blocks. This is essentially just the first game with a graphical overhaul. So that's kind of cool in its own right. You can experience the original, and I'll actually say I prefer the screen and sprite size here. You can see a lot more of what's going on. But again, it is a different experience, and this is really one of the biggest selling points for this game, though it is really obscure and hard to find. You do get a lot packed in here. You've got the base game with a graphical overhaul, and you've got the enemies here in the hallways. You can actually farm these guys for health if you need that. So again, you've got the graphical overhaul of the original, you've got the remake with added bosses, you've got the ability to play as bosses, you've got Mega Man Maker. I love everything about this game except the art style, really, and it hurts that they didn't give Mega Man 2 the same treatment. Maybe one day. Please, Capcom. Please. So how was it? It's really fun. I will say this is kind of like the kindergarten of the Mega Man series, provided you go for the new style and the easy setting. Otherwise, yeah, it's rough at times. If you go for the original, you're getting the original experience with some updated graphics, which is really cool in its own right. The original is kind of unfairly hard, and there are some game-breaking missables. Thinking back to Elect Man stage. Anyway, it has its moments. I don't love the chibi aesthetic. I mean, if you think the head on this little guy is big, it's a whole different ballgame. But that aside, don't love the graphics. Gameplay's good. Adding 2 new bosses is pretty cool, although I can't say Time Man or Oil Man are my favorites. Still kind of fun to have some extras. The ability to unlock and play as the boss characters is awesome. Nowhere else in the Mega Man series has that happened. You can use their abilities, but you can't play as them. So that's really cool. Then there's also the level creator. To my knowledge, this is the only officially released Mega Man title that lets you design your own levels, which is also cool. This is as close as that series ever got to like a Mario Maker. And it's unfortunate this thing is so hard to find. If you want to experience the interesting game that this is, and it really is, you're going to need a PlayStation Portable and a copy of the game. Now, a PSP, yeah, you can find those used. That's not too hard. The game itself is available for less than $30, so that's not terrible. But still, this is something that Capcom should really re-release because it is a very unique experience. Whether or not I like the art style notwithstanding, I did have a lot of fun with the game. So yeah, definitely recommend checking it out. If you have the hardware lying around or you can get a hold of it, go for it. As always, these ain't your granddad's games. They're your dad's.